husband's doing something, if he's allegedly doing something like this, you guys would know if your wives were up to some nefarious stuff. But let's just not forget who she is. She's been, for years, lecturing America about morality, inequality, systemic failures. And look at her track record. How many times does she have to go on in the past 2 months and look at the camera and do a legal apology?
You're sipping your coffee, scrolling through your usual newsfeed, when one name catches your eye, Sunny Hostin. But this time, it's not her usual fiery commentary on The View. It's something much worse. Her husband, Dr. Emmanuel Tin, is at the center of one of the largest RICO cases in New York history. Dr. Tin, a renowned orthopedic surgeon, is allegedly involved in insurance fraud, illegal kickbacks, and a lawsuit that includes nearly 200 people. If the charges stick, it could lead to federal prison time. While scandals like this often make headlines, what turned this story into a media frenzy was Joe Rogan. He didn't hesitate to call out Hostin on his podcast, accusing her of hypocrisy. He pointed out the irony of her moral crusading on television, while her husband faces serious criminal charges. Rogan didn't hold back, even taking shots at The View, labeling it one of the dumbest shows on TV, and joking that if you added up the host's IQs, you'd be hard-pressed to hit triple digits.
If you average out the View hosts, among the dumbest people on television.
Sunny's dumb. Certainly not the brightest person. And what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say. It's not a well thought out. It's like if you had an idea for a premise and it was totally baked and half baked and you went on stage with it and it's nothing.
Just
there.
go for it. Yeah.
Fans couldn't get enough. The internet exploded with memes, debates, and hot takes. Some rallied behind Sunny, arguing she wasn't responsible for her husband's actions, while others sided with Rogan, applauding him for calling out The View for its relentless criticism of others, all while turning a blind eye to their own scandals. So what exactly is Dr. Tin accused of? How did he end up at the center of such a massive case? And why is this RICO lawsuit a bigger deal than most realize? Let's dive in. Before all the drama, Dr. Emmanuel "Manny" Tin wasn't exactly a household name. He was just another well-regarded doctor in New York with a shining resume. He earned his medical degree from Johns Hopkins University, one of the most prestigious institutions in the country, before specializing in orthopedic surgery and sports medicine. Over the years, he built a solid reputation, treating both athletes and everyday patients. He even opened his own practice, 18 Orthopedics and Sports Medicine in Manhattan. But beyond his medical career, there was more to his story.
You know, doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance and then has to sue health insurance companies to get paid for the work that he's been trained his whole life to do. So there are a lot of problems with it. But the notion that we are in a violent country, this country was built on violence. We're a very violent country. And it's just undeniable that that's the case. And so I'm not, unfortunately, surprised that people are celebrating the use of violence.
Dr. Emmanuel Tin had been in the public eye mostly because of his wife, Sunny Hostin, co-host of The View. The couple married in 1998 and built a seemingly perfect life, successful careers, 2 kids, and a bond that appeared unbreakable. Their son, Gabriel, is currently studying at Harvard, while their daughter, Paloma, is at Cornell. To many, they seemed like the ultimate power couple. That's what makes the scandal so devastating. Before all this, Dr. Tin was a respected, well-educated surgeon with a stellar reputation. Now his name is tied to one of the largest medical fraud cases in New York's history, and his once pristine image is unraveling fast. Dr. Tin isn't just facing a lawsuit. He's caught up in one of the most significant RICO cases in New York's history. This isn't your average malpractice claim. This is a federal case accusing him and nearly 200 others of running a multi-million-dollar fraud ring that exploited loopholes in New York's insurance system. The scope of the accusations is staggering, and if convicted, Dr. Tin could face significant prison time. The lawsuit was filed by American Transit Insurance Company, which provides coverage for taxi, Uber, and Lyft drivers.
Always the people that always do the pointing, and it always comes back to them, all right? So when you said this is the largest RICO case ever filed in the state of New York, you guys wrap that around your brain. That's bigger than the mafia case. Like the mafia one was number one. This one takes it over. So he was scamming insurance companies from taxi drivers, Uber drivers, and Lyft drivers. He was performing unnecessary surgeries and then providing fraudulent medical services in exchange.
The claims against Dr. Tin and his associates are damning. According to the lawsuit, they manipulated New York's no-fault insurance law to secure massive payouts. This law mandates that insurance companies cover medical expenses for drivers involved in accidents, regardless of who's at fault. Dr. Tin and his co-defendants allegedly exploited this rule by billing for surgeries and procedures that were either unnecessary or, in some cases, never even performed. The accusations are brutal. Dr. Tin is being portrayed as a doctor who prioritized profits over patients, allegedly pressuring many low-income rideshare drivers into surgeries they didn't need instead of recommending physical therapy or non-invasive treatments. The lawsuit claims he fast-tracked patients to the operating table for high-revenue procedures, regardless of necessity, just to rack up the largest insurance payouts. As if that weren't enough, Dr. Tin is also accused of being part of a kickback scheme, where he and other doctors allegedly received illegal payments for patient referrals. The more patients they sent for procedures, the more money they made, regardless of whether those procedures were justified. But perhaps the most shocking part of the case is the scale of the operation, which appears to have been a vast, orchestrated fraud machine.
Citizen that has a policy. I mean, I'm not saying that Joe Rogan should be removed from Spotify. He's got 11 million listeners. He's got $100 million, contract as of 2020. But I do think as the podcast platform, you have to have some sort of guidelines. How about a disclaimer on his podcast that says, this is misinformation? How about removing some of the podcasts that disseminate this misinformation?
They have.
And that's
This lawsuit isn't just going after a few doctors. It's targeting nearly 200 defendants, making it one of the largest RICO cases ever filed in New York. The RICO Act, originally meant to take down mafia organizations, is now being used to pursue medical professionals. The scale of this case is so huge that it actually exceeds some of the biggest mafia trials in the state's history. If these allegations are proven in court, the consequences could be devastating. Dr. Tin and the other defendants face potential years in prison, the loss of their medical licenses, and millions in damages. For a man who built a career as a top orthopedic surgeon, this case could destroy everything he's worked for. While Dr. Tin battles these legal troubles, there's another angle to this story: his wife, Sunny Hostin. She's built her career around calling out corruption and wrongdoing. Yet now, she remains silent on the scandal surrounding her husband, and that silence hasn't gone unnoticed. It's exactly why Joe Rogan had a field day ripping into her on his podcast. Sunny Hostin has made a name for herself by exposing corruption, injustices, and holding people accountable. As a former federal prosecutor and co-host of The View, she's never been shy about voicing her opinions, especially when it comes to ethics, morality, and the law. She's publicly criticized politicians, public figures, and celebrities for their wrongdoings, always positioning herself as a defender of truth. But now, with her husband embroiled in a massive RICO lawsuit, Sunny finds herself in a position she never expected, on the other side of the controversy. For years, she has used her platform to scrutinize the integrity of others. Now, the focus is on her.
According to a new lawsuit obtained by Page Six, the orthopedic surgeon was one of 200 defendants named in one of the biggest racketeer influence and corrupt organization cases ever filed in New York. Emmanuel was accused of federal insurance fraud and, quote, getting kickbacks by performing surgery and billing a company that insured taxi companies and Uber.
But now, when it comes to her own household, Sunny's approach has changed drastically. Instead of addressing the allegations directly, she's gone into full defense mode, dismissing the lawsuit as a baseless attack on her family. In a statement released shortly after the news broke, Sunny denied any wrongdoing on her husband's part and called the case a frivolous attempt to smear their name. She insists that American Transit Insurance Company, the entity behind the lawsuit, is exploiting her public image to gain media attention. According to her, this isn't about justice or fraud. It's a struggling insurance company attempting to deflect from its own financial issues. She argues that ADCT is using her celebrity status to turn the lawsuit into a public spectacle, hoping the scandal will pressure her husband into settling. But Sunny's defense doesn't stop at words. She's fighting back legally too. She has filed a $5 million counter lawsuit for defamation, claiming that her husband is being unfairly targeted and that their family has suffered irreparable harm due to false accusations. In addition to financial compensation, she's demanding damages for the damage done to her family's reputation.
Her husband accused of committing federal insurance fraud in a lawsuit. Okay, now let's read this. Rob, is this a video?
Well, I have this. I'll show you this about.
Let me just read this and I'll come to you. So, Dr. Emmanuel Manny Hostin, an orthopedic surgeon and husband of the View co-host Sunny Hostin, is accused in December lawsuit fraudulently billing insurance. By the way, this is a Daily Caller story I'm reading. The lawsuit alleges Hostin knowing
for financial compensation. She's also demanding a public retraction and apology from American Transit Insurance Company, AIC. Despite a strong public stance, her response has raised eyebrows, especially among the View audience. Sunny has built a reputation for being relentless in her criticism of others. She's gone after politicians, business leaders, and fellow media personalities for corruption and misconduct. Yet, when her own husband faces federal-level criminal accusations, her tone has shifted dramatically. Many have pointed out the hypocrisy in her reaction. If this was someone else's scandal, wouldn't Sunny be leading the charge, demanding accountability? Wouldn't she be grilling the accused, scrutinizing every detail of their story, and calling for legal action? Instead, she's playing the victim, deflecting blame onto an insurance company rather than addressing the serious nature of the allegations against her husband. Even on The View, her usual outspokenness has been conspicuously absent when the topic comes up. Instead of openly discussing the case as she would with any other high-profile legal scandal, she's avoided directly addressing the details. Her silence has only fueled the fire, with critics arguing that if she had nothing to hide, she would be more forthcoming about the situation. Meanwhile, Joe Rogan and other media figures have capitalized on her silence. Rogan, in particular, has been relentless in mocking her, pointing out the irony of someone who built a career on attacking others, now refusing to hold herself to the same standard. His audience has roasted Sunny online, calling her out for being quick to judge others, while unwilling to accept the same level of scrutiny when it's directed at her own life. Sunny's
Hostin's attorney Daniel Twites denies the allegations, calling the lawsuit a meritless attempt by a near-bankrupt insurance carrier to intimidate doctors and restrict healthcare benefits. The case involves claims that Hostin performs unnecessary surgeries on patients after minor accidents without exploring less invasive treatments, with American Transit citing New York's 1974 no-fault law as contributing to widespread.
Sunny's reaction has definitely put her in a tough spot. By choosing to defend her husband unconditionally, she's opened herself up to accusations of bias, hypocrisy, and even dishonesty. With the lawsuit still ongoing, there's a strong possibility that more damaging details could come to light, making her defense even harder to maintain. Joe Rogan didn't hold back the moment the news about Dr. Emmanuel Tin's involvement in a federal RICO case broke. He saw it for what it was, pure hypocrisy. Sunny Hostin, who spent years tearing into politicians, business leaders, and media figures over their scandals, suddenly found herself on the receiving end of public scrutiny. But instead of acknowledging the seriousness of the allegations against her husband, she dismissed it as a smear campaign. That's exactly what set Rogan off on his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience. Rogan called out Sunny for positioning herself as a moral authority on national television while her husband faced accusations of insurance fraud, kickbacks, and illegal surgeries. He pointed out how quick she is to demand accountability from others, but now that her own family is under fire, she suddenly has nothing to say. Rogan didn't stop at Sunny. He took aim at The View as a whole, a show he's mocked multiple times before. He didn't mince words, mocking the host's intelligence and joking that if you combined all their IQs, you'd still struggle to hit triple digits. He didn't just imply that the show lacked substance.